right, good morning, everybody. I guess we are ready to start. So I'm Nina Buffi. I'm CEO at Ospen, a biotech company from Berlin. And today I'm going to talk about mistakes, failure, and how to deal with them. And a very, very funny thing is that a series of mistakes, mainly my mistake, almost prevented me to be here this morning and talking to you. So I will quickly tell you the story. So I was in Greece, and I was supposed to drive with my partner from Greece to Budapest to catch a flight from Budapest to Hamburg directly yesterday around 5 o'clock. Now, we checked Google Maps, how long should that take, and then we had a few hours buffer, that should be fine. And then we got completely stuck on the border between Serbia and Hungary, and we got stuck there for hours and hours. So I called the airline and said, not going to make it at 5. There was another flight from Vienna to Hamburg again directly. A bit later in the evening, at 8:30 it was. I say, probably that I'm going to make it. Can you please rebook my flight? Say, sure, no problem. Give me your email address so that I can send you the new boarding pass and everything. Okay. Then we drive like crazy to Vienna trying to catch the flight at 8:30. And then, long story short, when I'm there at the airport, I still don't have the email with the boarding pass. So then again, I call the airline again, so you know how it goes. They say, be patient, somebody will take care of you, blah, blah. And finally, the lady at the phone tells me, well, there was a mistake, and the lady before, she booked the seat, but you have no ticket. So I had a seat, but not a ticket. And since it was too late, she told me I cannot do anything. You get a full refund. But the problem is that I was in Vienna, and I needed to be in Berlin this morning. So luckily enough, there was still a flight this morning at 7, which I cashed, and I'm here now speaking. So that was quite a story to be here. I'm quite happy. Thank you. So now maybe you can start thinking about a mistake it happened to you or you did in the last, I don't know, 1-2 years, something like that. One of these mistakes where you go, oh my God, that's really bad. Apart, of course, the mistake of maybe sitting here and listen to me, maybe it's going to be boring, I don't know. But so think about it, because the best mistake that will be shared here in this audience, I'm willing to give a pizza to that mistake. And maybe think about it, maybe you can get inspired a bit from these mistakes I'm going to show to you. So I hope you are a bit inspired. Let's see at the end if you have some mistake to share. Now, before you can share your mistake, I would like actually to tell you the story of why I'm here today, asking you this weird question of think about a mistake. So everything started. Oh, pull it. That's already a mistake. It's pretty good. Okay, yeah. So everything started roughly 3 years ago when I took the position of co-CEO in the company that I'm leading now. And we had a pretty tough board meeting. The financial situation of the company was not so good, and the atmosphere was a bit tense. And at some point, there is one of the board members that looks at me in the eyes and say, look, if the company fails, you will have to talk to me. And I was like, I really didn't know what to say. I was just like, yeah, I kind of panicked, and I could not answer. And for the days after, I was really thinking about the episode, and I was at first very angry at the person, and then thinking, okay, what's going on, and so on. And I started thinking, actually, I'm super afraid of failing, of doing mistakes. And I was like, for me, the idea that the company could not make it was almost unbearable. And I thought that's actually rationally thinking. I was like, it's pretty weird in the sense that when you run a startup, it's pretty common that things don't work out as you wanted. So it's like, okay. And then I also start thinking, yeah, actually it's true that every time, like, I'm always a bit nervous when I have to do something, to present something about feedback and so on. And I also thought, like, this also is sometimes making things even more complicated than that should be because of that. And I also noticed that was not only me, of course, that other people was like feeling the same. I remember a very silly episode in the company where at some point a compressor broke. So this compressor broke, and was the question, okay, should we buy a new one? Should we replace it? And I was talking to the people, and the first reaction was like, it's not me, I didn't do anything wrong. It's like, and so I say, okay, why is that? Why are we always so afraid and always defending ourselves? And the thing is that, of course, making mistakes is not nice. I mean, breaking something in the company you're working for, having your company failing, it's not nice. And generally speaking, there are mistakes which are obviously terrible. Like, you don't want to be the pilot of that plane, of course. But I thought there is something more. It's not just about the mistakes as such. And actually, if you think about it, it starts pretty early on. I don't know which experience you had in school, but I remember this thing that we had a math teacher, and of course, he used to do tests in class, right? And when it was about to give back the test to the student, the situation was the following. He was sitting in front of the class, and then it would call you by name to come to the front. So, like, for instance, my surname is Buffi. He would call Buffi, and then I would have to walk to the front. And then he was giving you the test and saying the grade loud in front of everybody. Now, if your grade is okay or is great, that's no problem, of course. But if your grade is bad, you were really walking back to your desk, and was kind of a walk of shame. And you really have the feeling everybody was thinking, oh, he or she's stupid, she will never be good in math and stuff like that. So I think that it started pretty early on, where we kind of don't make enough the distinction between I made a mistake and I am wrong, I'm a failure, I'm not capable of, in general, doing that thing I'm trying to do. So I did something wrong and I'm wrong, I'm kind of confused. And actually, we transfer that in the adulthood and in other domains. Here you see the poor Charlie Brown. He misses a hit, and then he basically feels like he's not a good enough baseball player. It's not just about the ball he misses. And the same is a bit the same. We had a pretty bad episode in the company, pretty recently actually, where there was some tension between the engineers, and then one engineer told to the other one, well, if you don't get this, you cannot be called an engineer. So it's sometimes really not about the mistake, it's the meaning that we give to it. Like, imagine I'm here talking to you, and suddenly I start, I don't know, forgetting what I want to say, or instead of looking at the audience, try to look at some eyes, I'm just looking down, or I'm supposed to talk 30 minutes and it's gonna last 40 or something like that. So now I have two options. Like, I could think about, oh yeah, that didn't go ideally, and just say, okay, this and this was not good, next time I'm gonna try to hopefully do it a bit better. Or if things go really bad, I can start like questioning myself, start thinking, oh my God, I'm not able to speak in public, I'm supposed to be a leader, and I was in front of the audience and I failed, and am I a good CEO or not? So, and so on, depending how bad, of course, the situation is, and which level of confidence you have, of course. So that's a bit the thing. So I think by letting mistakes not stay as they are, but extrapolating, if you want, there are three main consequences. And one I spoke about this is self-doubt. So really questioning the legitimacy of our position because of one or few mistakes that we made. The other thing that I also experienced myself is to become stubborn in the sense that we try even harder. Like, if you take the example of me forgetting here what I want to say, I could say, next time I'm gonna learn by heart exactly every sentence, every word of what I'm gonna say, to make sure, and I will learn by heart to really make sure that there is no chance I'm gonna fail there. The thing is that, of course, some level of control helps, but mistakes tend to happen anyway, and also if you try to control too much, at some point you also make yourself miserable, if you take this example of the talk. And another consequence is very often is hiding. So we tend to hide mistakes. Like go on LinkedIn, you see, we just raised a Series A fund of blah blah blah, or I just got a new position as CTO, CEO, CO, whatever. But we never really read something like, yeah, we tried to raise some money for our next financing round and we didn't manage, or I applied to 50 positions and nobody even answered me. So we don't write these things, right? And we had, for instance, few years ago. So in the company, at the end of the year, what we do is what we call an end of year review. So we basically told to each employee, and we try to see how was the year, what went well, what went not so well, and so on. And it goes on both sides. And 2 years ago, there was a question in the questionnaire, and I was like, what could you have done better this year? And it was literally a person who could not just come up with one single thing he could have done better. And I was like, okay, were you perfect? I was like, yeah, I don't know what I did wrong. So really, this thing of hiding and like some defense mechanism where we always try to appear as like we don't do mistakes, we are great, and so on. So once we assess that, of course, the question is, what can I do? What can we do to not solve it? Is also can go pretty deeply psychologically, but at least how can we help and make the situation better? And I was thinking, for instance, in my organization, what can I do to make for my people the situation a bit better? And there are two concepts, two elements that help here. So I think we need to try to destigmatize mistakes and failures, and more generally, we need to try to create an environment where there is some psychological safety, because again, as I said before, mistakes happen anyway, no matter how you try to control, and failure is an option. So we need to try to create an environment where we are not so afraid and we don't feel so judged when a mistake happens. So for the one of you who are not familiar, psychologically in a psychologically safe environment is an environment where people feel able to ask for help, feel free to admit mistake, to raise concerns, suggest ideas, and so on. And in general, they feel like they are not judged for making one mistake. And here you see on your right, actually, this comic is pretty funny. Like it shows clearly a non-safe environment where the boss or the one in charge of the meeting asks, okay, you say yes if you're in favor, and everybody say yes, but everybody's thinking, yeah, well, actually not. But nobody dare really to speak up and to say that it's not okay. Of course, this all sounds cool, but the question is, of course, how to achieve that. That's the real challenge. How do we get to an environment where this that I just mentioned really happens? And of course, if you check the literature out there and so on, there are many ways. What I think, in my experience, there are 5 elements that work actually pretty nicely. So the first thing is to try to flatten the hierarchy in your team, in your organization. I'm speaking here about business team, but it can also well be a sport team and so on. The second thing is to acknowledge, for you as a leader, like for the one who are leading a team, doesn't matter how large it is, but to acknowledge your limits, to practice team reflections, like when, for instance, a project is delivered or some task had to be done, to really think about it and discuss what went wrong, what went in a nice way, and how can we improve, and so on. The fourth element is to listen to your people, and to give them the opportunity to speak and to voice their opinion. And then, of course, to destigmatize mistakes and failure. Now, this was a summary. Now, I'm going to go through these 5 elements and try to give a bit of an example and make it a bit more clear, because maybe here it just sounds like a list of things. So I'm not saying here that we should flatten the hierarchy. I'm not or like making the hierarchy completely flat. That's not at all what I mean. I do believe that in an organization you need some kind of hierarchy, in the sense that you need people that in certain domain take decision, take the responsibility for what is happening, and so on. For instance, I'm responsible to make sure that at the end of the month there is enough money to pay the salary. I'm the one responsible, and that's it. And I take decision as far as the finance plan is concerned. So, but what I mean by that is that there can be 2 arts for that. Like I can basically, I don't know, let's assume the team voiced the opinion that we should hire a new engineer because we don't have enough resources for a project, I can just say, no, that's not going to happen, it's not possible. Or I can, first of all, get the input from the people and really try to understand, okay, what happens if you don't hire this person? What are difficulties that then raise in this project and so on? And also try to explain my decision and say, guys, I do understand your concerns. I do understand that we might slow down in that project. We might maybe miss the deadline, but considering what are the consequences if we spend money in hiring this person, I do prefer to don't hire this person and live with the consequences of a missed deadline or something. So this dialogue, I think it's very important it is there. And that definitely help to create a nice environment, I believe. The second point, so we are fallible, and I think it's important sometimes to show our vulnerability. Of course, so basically to say, I made a mistake, or how I found this difficult, or whatever. And of course, we are not in a lollipop world, and of course, there might be people out there that can use your vulnerability, so you need to be a bit careful, at least in my experience, so about when to show yourself vulnerable and with whom you share your vulnerability, to whom you say, I find this pretty tough, or there I was not really perfect. But it's important to do it. And here is an example. I put the image of Merkel because I think was definitely during COVID, and at some point, I think it was for Easter, she announced a lockdown, and then it was clear that it was not possible to implement that lockdown because she announced it too late, or she took the decision too late. And so she publicly said, okay, that was my mistake. And I think this is sometimes is important to show that we as a leader, we can fail. And then I was mentioning team reflection. So here is about when we deliver a project, when we were supposed to perform a task or something, to discuss at the end about what did we wanted to achieve, what we actually achieved, and what is the difference between the two, how we can do better next time, and so on. And I think that here is very important to don't focus at all on whose fault was it. That is something I saw very often in my professional life to like he did that, and it doesn't really bring us forward. The question is more like how could that happen? Of course, sometimes it could happen that somebody, myself included, or you as well, like we do something really like one can think, yeah, that person could have avoided. But the point is almost never, again, whose fault, but really how can we do it better next time? Yeah, and then there was a listening element, which is very interesting. So, and for that, I would like to share with you a study that was made, where basically it was compared how the German Air Force crew and the Israeli Air Force crews react to emergencies, or how they deal with emergencies when these emergencies happen. And it turned out that there was this interviewing process of some commander in the army, and the German answer basically that when there is in an emergency, you should just follow checklist and listen to what the commander says. And the Israeli were saying, well, actually, what we do is that we ask the lowest in rank what does he or she thinks. The reason is that it happen quite often that the commander is wrong. But the lowest in rank, maybe he sees the mistake. But the problem is that being lower in rank, he doesn't dare to speak up and say, maybe I shouldn't do it. And then the mistake happened. By asking the person to speak up and say, okay, what do you think? You can prevent mistakes on top of course, creating a nicer environment. Now, the reason, to be fair, the reason why the Germans and the Israeli answer different is that Israeli are way more used to being in emergency situations than the Germans. So they are way more confronted with uncertainty and emergencies and so on. So that's also an explanation of these different ways to react. But I think if you translate that in the business world, it can be a good exercise, especially in situations which are not so clear and so on, to just ask the most junior one, the one that just joined the company, what do you think? How would you do it? The worst case is an answer you think, yeah, well, it's a bit naive. Could be. But sometimes you really get good answers, and that otherwise maybe you might not get. So Now, of course, you could tell me, yeah, okay, all this psychological safety or nice and so on, but at the end of the day, we are also accountable for the stuff out there. Like, for instance, I'm very safe if I'm playing Monopoly with friends, but at the end of the day, I need to deal with finance plan and make to be sure that the company runs. So how to balance this accountability on one side and safety. And for that, there is this typical 2x2 matrix for the one who were in some business classes. So where on the x-axis you have accountability, on the y-axis you have safety. Now let's start with the bottom left corner. So if the accountability is low, meaning that you don't have much task where you're responsible for and so on, and the safety is low, and the meaning that if you make a mistake, people are there pointing a finger. Most likely you end up in an apathy kind of situation where you say, well, I don't do anything because I don't have much to do, and if I do it, I'm going to be judged for that. So that's bad. If the accountability is low and the safety is high, we are in a bit in the monopoly situation of before. So we are super in a very comfortable position, but it's not very challenging. And if you want to do a bit bigger thing than playing Monopoly, we don't want to be there. Now, if the accountability is high, so we are here on the right bottom, if the accountability is high, but the safety is low, meaning I have a huge responsibility, but then if I do make one single mistake, well then finger pointing again, then I feel overwhelmed. And where we want to be is basically in a situation where we are accountable of many things, where we have many responsibility, but at the same time, there is enough safety to try a few things out, where it's not a drama if one mistake happens or two. And the thing is that many studies have shown that when we are in this learning zone is where actually less mistakes happen and the teams perform best. You can, for instance, Google did some studies like that. You can Google it literally. It's pretty interesting to see. And so some time ago in the company, we say, okay, how can we try to make an exercise, or how can we really practically do something that destigmatize mistakes and make it a bit easier to talk about mistakes? And the idea was also to share them, because the point is that if you hide the mistakes, we don't talk about the mistakes we make, we also prevent other people from learning from them. So maybe next time, if it happens you to be in Greece and you have a flight from Budapest, maybe you plan a bit more time than I did. So sharing is important. And so what we came up with was what we call the mistake of the week. So we were basically having every week we would share a mistake that we did, and then there was a discussion in the group, and then we were voting for the best mistake of the week. And the best mistake was getting a pizza. That was the idea, and I think it's a nice exercise that worked quite well. And also that gave me the idea how to answer the board member that told me, I told you the story at the beginning, that told me, if the company fails, you will have to talk to me. Of course, I never had the chance to answer like that, and maybe I wouldn't even have the courage, of course, to answer like that. But under the shower, sometimes I'm, in this situation where you think, how could I have answered? I say, if you tell me, if you say again a sentence like that, I say, sure. If you fail, we talk, but you pay for the pizza. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I would like now to hear from you, actually. Of course, if you have questions, just feel free to ask questions, but would be great, would be a great thing if some of you would be willing to share something that you didn't do ideally. Or maybe you can share a mistake of somebody else. Maybe it's easier that you can also do.